Welcome to Sportsbet Daily at oddsmarket.com. It's nearly Christmas and we've had an unbelievable 2019. And the boys that are going to join me is James and Snize, who are obviously our tennis experts, and they have had a phenomenal year. So we're going to have a little recap on what's gone on, their upsets, who's been most impressive. Highlights, personal highlights. Has there been any lessons learned? And then we'll go for their 2020 expectations. Lads, first of all, congratulations on a great year.
Thanks, Flash. It's been a pleasure just grinding along with the tennis season with you guys. And it's time to start to get hyped for 2020.
James, I'll come to you first, and we'll start with a negative. What do you think have been the biggest upsets this year?
I'd say that's a positive. Personally, that's what I want in tennis. I want all the upsets. So I wrote an article about this for Odds Market, which you can find. It was a couple of weeks ago now. So I would advise people to go and read that if they want a comprehensive overview. But I would say probably I'm actually going to mention an upset that I didn't mention in the article because there were just so many that you couldn't write about all of them. And there's one that I kind of felt afterwards like I probably should have included, especially for a British crowd. And that was Murray winning Antwerp. Now, he was technically an underdog in the final. Now, part of the reason I didn't go for this one in the article is because there were many much bigger upsets according to the bookies' odds. And you know, from a casual viewer's perspective, it doesn't feel like the biggest upset. I mean, a few years ago, Murray would have been beating Wawrinka as a clear favorite. But I think the whole point of this one was the comeback trail for Murray. I mean, he's still very much in the process of doing that. So I'm not going to say that he's kind of completed his journey yet. But that tournament was a very pivotal tournament for him. He was able to show that he could actually still win a main level event, even after coming back from major hip surgery and being behind in several of the matches that week. You know, it was not an easy week. So yeah, for me, that was one of the most impressive underdog things I've seen this year.
Snize, I look at Nadal, Federer, Djokovic. How do you think they're going to look back on their season?
I think it's been, mostly a positive season for actually all three of these guys. I think that starting with who ended as world number one, Rafael Nadal. He's had a fantastic season, one where he has mostly been healthy for the first time in a long time. He's been able to endure the hardcore grind, which is usually so tough on his limbs. And we usually see him missing a lot of time with injury. That hasn't happened this year, which is the main reason he's been able to compete in almost every single tournament and go deep in almost every single tournament he's been in, and thus end the year as number one. And remember, earlier in the season, there were question marks surrounding Rafael Nadal. He had started the clay swing really poorly, and by really poorly, that means not winning titles. And he was titleless. I think it was all the way up until Roland Garros, even that he hadn't won anything. Was it Rome? Yeah, up until Rome.
He won Rome.
Yeah, exactly, up until Rome. So question marks there, really persevered. Impressive. Novak Djokovic obviously has had a fantastic year as well. He won 2 titles in the majors. He was able to demolish Nadal in the Australian Open final, 3-0, dominant sets to nil. And he's just been plugging along. You have noticed that he's dipped a bit in the non-slams. He hasn't been as focused. But he said that as well, that mostly that's the main thing that keeps him going. And I wrote an article about this, the Grand Slam battle between Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal, and the quest that each of them have to be able to get that once they all retire. But Djokovic won Australian Open. He won Wimbledon, which we really didn't think, especially after Federer held 2 match points on serve. But he was able to come back, take that title. He won a couple of Masters. Down the stretch of the season, did look good. So I think overall, should be very happy with his season. Federer, obviously the big thing for him is losing that Wimbledon final. I think that will be one thing that he will look to do over next year. But apart from that, it's been a really positive year for him as well. I mean, Well, number 3, he's 38 years of age. I was impressed with the way he played during the clay swing, which he had skipped in previous years. And he came back impressed. He played really solid tennis on the most unsuited surface to him on tour, being that slow as it is, and he needs quick, aggressive play to win. So really performed well there. And if he can keep up his health and keep up winning, he has a couple of records in shot now, such as most titles won ever, and he could still win some more Grand Slams. So all in all, positive year for all the big men.
James, just a quick one on Nadal. Married, happy life. Do you think that there's a possibility that we're going to see a new, improved Rafa Nadal next year?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we already have. I mean, I think it's quite notable. To be honest, I don't. It's one of those things. I'm talking about the tennis with people I watch it with, people I know. One of the things, obviously, it's always been obvious with both Nadal and Djokovic. Why are their serves not that good? Why are they not top class? They're top class in everything else. And then all of a sudden, the past year, basically they've both addressed that. I think as they've got older, they've realized that they have to if they want to stay in the game. And why not? I mean, especially as the coaching gets better, you might as well improve it. So I think from a technical perspective, I think Nadal's already better. And yeah, for sure. I mean, the marriage has been coming a long time. We know he's a bit of an OCD character, so maybe he will feel a bit calmer, let go a little bit more. Maybe he'll feel that kind of coming towards the end of the season, you get an extra second wind, or however you want to look at it. But yeah, I would not be surprised at all.
Okay, who's been the most impressive individuals on the men and the women's, James?
Okay, so I think the obvious person to point out from the women's is, of course, Andreescu. Might want to let Snize talk about her.
Okay, you do the men. Okay, you do the male, and we'll let Snize do the female.
Okay, cool. So I would say on the men's, there's a few people at different levels of the tour. So we saw at the end of the year from the lower tiers, someone that people probably hadn't even heard of. I mean, we were aware of him as tennis followers for a while, and that's Yannick Sinner. And of course, he was just excellent in Milan. It was really remarkable to watch him improve over the week. I mean, I thought he started the week about as well as he could finish it. But I mean, that performance in the final against Domino was just unplayable. So I'd say from the younger tiers, definitely Sinner for me has been. I mean, he's going to have a bright future if he stays in the game. The only question mark for him, in my mind, is A, does he pick up an injury, and then B, is he? He's quite young. Is he going to keep that motivation? But I think he will. And then on the higher tiers, you would say, I think there's a couple of people that very obviously stand out. Medvedev is probably the number one. He fizzled out a bit at the end of the year, but then that was kind of inevitable. I mean, we kept saying he's got to burn out soon. I mean, he's been playing so ridiculously well. Of course, probably the highlight for Medvedev, at least from a viewer's perspective, was when he very nearly did that comeback at the US Open from 2 sets down against Rafa. He came back, won the next 2 sets. He actually had really good chances at the start of the 5th, but couldn't quite do it. And I think, it was very clear from watching that he's going to be winning slams probably sooner rather than later. And then, of course, at the end of the year, you had Thiem and Tsitsipas, both of whom were in the final of the ATP finals. Not Djokovic, not Federer, not Nadal. It was those two. So that's important both from a general perspective. The patterns are shifting, as Snize wrote about in his article. Things are shifting. But it's also it was a phenomenal match that kind of capped two players who played incredibly well in the run-up to that. Especially, Thiem winning in his home tournament of Vienna was really lovely because he's just always played dreadfully on hard court, on indoor hard. And, we always knew it was a fatigue thing more than anything else, partly a style thing, but he really showed that he can and is excellent on those surfaces when he's fit and healthy.
Snize, take the smile off your face. Tell me about the most impressive women. And if you can do the same as what James done, is obviously you're going to go on and you're going to speak about Bianca, but give us someone else from the lower echelons of the women's side, please.
All right, so obviously we're going to start with Andreescu. She is, without a doubt, the biggest exclamation mark of this season to me. Started the year outside of the top 100 and just came blasting through everything. She was just showing he was just borderline unplayable for most of the matches that she took the court in. She just had it all. The keen mind, she never gave up. The physicality, the skill, the variety, just everything. She went on several winning streaks. The most impressive one was I think it was 16 straight wins, starting from Canada, going through the US Open, and then ending finally in Beijing to Osaka. But it's just a fantastic season for her. She won 3 major big titles in Indian Wells, at the Rogers Cup, and then she won the US Open, obviously defeating Serena Williams in her home tournament in front of 23,000 screaming American fans, and she won 2-0. So absolutely insane season for Andreescu. In the lower echelons, also a bit of an obvious choice perhaps, but it's Coco Gauff has to be mentioned. 15 years of age. Not many people knew who she was, but she started to make some really, really impressive results. She came as the youngest player ever to come through Wimbledon qualifying and in the Open era, that is. And it was just so interesting because she's mentioned the will to play the Williams sisters. Those were her idols, and she actually ended up playing Venus Williams in the first round of Wimbledon. She won that match and went on to make a big run there until she ran into eventual winner Simona Halep. So fantastic year. Later in the year, she won her first title in Linz indoors, beating a rejuvenated Ostapenko in the final. So fantastic year for Gauff. She is so young. She has everything to play for in the future. Already breaking into the top 100, and yeah, sky's the limit for her.
Is it fair to say, and I'm just going to reel off, and this is obviously, I'm not an absolute expert, but I have some knowledge, and obviously you've educated me along. I'm just going to say, so you said Andreescu, you said Coco Gauff, and then we have Barty, Svitolina, Wang, Halep, Pliskova, Serena, Ostapenko. And is it ever been more competitive on the women's side? James?
Tough question. I mean, I think if we look at the way that tennis works over all tours, men and women, it gets harder. There's lots of ways to quantify that, but it gets a lot harder over time. And I think it would definitely be fair to say, from what I've seen, that in both the men's and women's, but perhaps especially in the women's, it is really, really tough to be the best now, especially for a decent period of time. You have to be really quite exceptional. I mean, Serena used to not lose matches, and you can argue that's her getting worse, and maybe it is to some degree. But I'd also argue that players have just started figuring things out. It's not as easy as it used to be. You have to be that much better in every area of the game to be at the top.
Oh, I mean, I just reeled off 9 names there, and I'm probably doing another 10 players a disservice. Snize, I look at this women's side, and it's just, there's quality, there's quantity, and every single tournament, and God knows how you boys do it, and you actually pick the right ones more times than you don't, that it's so much more entertainment on the women's side, because you look at the men's and you've got to be more, I don't know, in depth with your knowledge to maybe pick the right side. But with the women's, wow, they're becoming household names.
Yeah, it's just the competitiveness is off the charts on the women's side. Let's just take slams for example. On the men's side, we have the usual suspects, the big 3, and even they are starting to get more and more challenged now by the next generation of players. Speaking to James's point, just how hard it is to stay on top, even for players who have been among the most dominant we have ever seen in the history of men's tennis. And on the women's side, there are just far too many. If you look at the slams, the last 12 have all seen 12 different women win the title. Last 12 slams, which is just unreal. So there are so many. Anyone really in the top 20, or like Andreescu this year, a new name could emerge from anywhere and just shoot up to the top. And yeah, it's just so difficult to be the best, especially in women's tennis right now. It's so competitive, so hard to predict, and that's also what makes it so enjoyable.
James, give me your one highlight for 2019 that just goes bang straight into your mind.
Asking the difficult questions here. I mean, there are so
Well,
many.
that's my job. Yeah, I mean, listen, nothing's easy. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, if I'm not going to go for Murray, because I've already talked about that, it's probably Medvedev. To be honest, it's probably that the U.S. Open final. It's really hard to pick. It depends what you're going for in terms of the impact of the moment. But for me, that was probably one of the most, if not the most, significant moment of the year in men's tennis, because it became very, very, very clear that players are going to be able to start beating Nadal, Djokovic, Federer in the 5-set format. And really, if you really look at it, it's only been them beating each other. I mean, for as long as I can remember, really, since I've been following tennis, it's just been them beating each other. The occasional upset from someone like Del Potro, perhaps. But in reality, that was it. And it's a little bit boring. So I think seeing Medvedev figure that out in real time, watching him figure it out from 2 sets down, Nadal, I don't really think Nadal went off. I think Medvedev figured something out, and that is going to get increasingly apparent as they play more matches. So yeah, I'd probably have to go for that. I mean, I think in terms of pure entertainment, Djokovic beating Federer, I mean, it was horrible for me watching it as a big Federer fan, but that was unbelievable. It's the first time since 1948 that anyone's lost Wimbledon when having match points. And Federer had 2 match points, 40-15 up on his own serve. I mean, that is truly remarkable on grass for him to lose that. I mean, he says it's not being carried with him, but I would, dear me, that's really is a once-in-a-generation thing.
Yeah. Snize, I'm looking at the season. How different, and have you learned any lessons in your betting strategy from the start to the end?
Yeah, definitely. The key takeaway for me this season has been working out a strategy for approaching different tournaments and different stages of the season in different manners, because tennis is such a fluctuating sport. The players can fluctuate in form. There are different tournaments, different parts of the world. There are some tournaments that take precedence in players' minds. There are some tournaments that aren't as important. So definitely, especially in the weeks before a slam and the weeks after a slam, that's where we see a lot of upsets, a lot of fluctuations in the performances from the top players who are either maybe looking a bit ahead a bit to the big one, or a bit burnt out after the big one. Also, the Asian swing is an area in particular I've learned a lot of lessons from, because I just have to have quite a different approach to that, because a lot of players dislike playing in Asia. A lot of players don't put in their best efforts, whilst we have the super patriotic, super hardworking home players who love playing there and such are capable of a lot of upset results. So definitely those are times of the season where you need to tread a bit extra carefully, and definitely something I learned this season.
James, did you learn anything major from start to finish this year in your betting strategy?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things. I think probably the thing that stands out conceptually the most is the idea that just because things are changing doesn't mean that they change all at once, which is quite, it's kind of obvious when you say it, but it's quite easy when you're betting to think in binaries and to think I'm either in this mode or that mode. But in reality, a lot of the time, I mean, as Snize says, you have to be incredibly careful about context. You have to be very aware of what's actually going on and why. Otherwise, you're kind of just shooting in the dark. But I think also for me, there's that sense you might have a theory that's valid. You might have an idea which is true. But if you time it wrong, it's as good as getting it wrong in betting it. You have to be very sensitive to that kind of thing. And I think for me, it's been one of those years where I feel like I've had the right idea in a lot of places, but not necessarily always had the right result. And I think that it can just be variance, but I think it can also be checking yourself a little bit, learning to manage that better.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I think that goes right across the board with nearly every single sport that we delve into, because I'm like me myself personally, who obviously does the Premier League punters as a capper, or I do the NFL, or I do the lower leagues. My format of my process and the way that I get round and make a selection is 9 times out of 10 correct. But because I fall on the wrong side, I have to make sure that I don't then change my format and my thought process, because then I'm scrambled, and then I've not got any foundation to where I'm actually going. So no, that's a massively valid point. And it's also anybody out there that stick to your guns. And the other thing I was going to say to you, Snize, is there's a lot more in-play options now. So have you found that you can see a spot, but you don't press it? Or you now have become more ruthless in pressing it?
I'll definitely say I've become more confident when it comes to live betting, especially in a sport like tennis, where fluctuations can happen in both performance and price instantly. There's a lot of value to be exploited. I'd say especially on the women's side, because it's more unpredictable. It's more of a mental game. You can sometimes see and hear where some women's players just lose it and just go completely lose the plot and just break down. And those are prime opportunities to go in on the other side and bet. Problem with live betting in tennis is it's difficult to get those live bets out to the public in time, because things happen really quickly in the blink of an eye. Prices change, and it's just so hard to be able to give out a bet and then have that price stick around for a long time. So it's usually something I do by myself, and we'll see if the opportunity presents itself to give it out more to backers as well.
Yeah, but obviously before you can give it out to the public, you've got to be 100% on your game and see a spot and press the button all in one go. So first of all, you sort yourself out, and then others can obviously benefit on the back of you being 100% in your own mind that you're doing the right thing. James, your 2020 expectations, and also what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so I've got an article coming out about expectations for Murray specifically for 2020. But I think, again, this is going to be a recurring theme. Is there going to be a new winner of various things, mainly the slams? Is there going to be a shift? Is that going to continue to happen? I mean, I think inevitably it will. We've got the Bryans who've said that they're going to retire at the 2020 US Open. All these things are just symbolic, really, but we can see that the old guard is starting to disappear. And so it's that is really all that's going through my mind, is trying to figure out who is going to be the new people. We already see some of them. It's very clear who some of them are likely to be. But it's just it's that air of change, that sense that things are definitely transitioning. And so I want to be on the right side of that. I want to be following people who are probably going to make me a lot of money over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And then I think for me, Murray's a big one. I am very interested in to see what will happen with Murray and how he'll be able to maintain it. I mean, we've kind of had dream comeback stories from the big three, especially. I mean, I would say Novak, despite actually winning the second most titles this year, behind Dodig, weirdly. But I would say he's actually someone who hasn't done that well and come back in terms of physically looking completely fit, whereas Nadal and Federer both were able to do that. And I just wonder if Murray will as well. I mean, he's probably, I would guess, had the most major issue of all of them comfortably. I'm not sure, but I would guess so. And so if he can actually maintain that next year, I mean, imagine if he could get back into the top 20, even top 50 would be huge. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does.
Okay, Jane, Snize, you're looking forward to obviously the 2020, your expectations. And what about visiting a few more tournaments?
So 2020 is going to be, I think, in my mind, a sensational tennis year. I think James was talking about it. Is the new guard going to, surpass the old guard on the men's side? Or are we going to see a new Grand Slam champion? I have an article up on that. So on Odds Market. So if you haven't read that, yeah, go ahead and do so. But I think in general, we're going to see a theme of the newcomers coming closer and closer and closer in every tournament. We've already seen it this year, and I think that Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal will be challenged now for almost each and every slam and big tournament that they contest. So that's going to be interesting to follow. On the women's side, WTA is going to be crazy as per usual, really. I'm just going to be very interested in seeing the new guns coming up, the Coco Gauffs, the Bianca Andreescu's. If Amanda Anisimova can rebound from losing her father earlier in the year. A lot of young players, as always, coming up there. And I'm going to have an article out on players to watch in 2020. It's going to land probably this Friday, so keep a watch out for that. I have a couple of players in mind there that I'm also going to be very excited to follow. And yeah, regarding the tournament things, definitely going to try and attend more tournaments, challengers in particular, because you can get so close and personal with the players. You can flow around the courts, flow around, actually, talk to them, interact with them, and challengers are free. So very good way to watch high quality tennis and increasing your understanding of players and tennis in general. So that's going to be a goal for 2020. Definitely going to attend Stockholm again. Fantastic tournament. So look forward to that one. And yeah, we'll try to get as many as I can in.
Snize, did you say challenges are free?
Yeah, they are free to attend. Most of the time.
Which challenges have you been going to? They're not free in the UK.
Nothing's free in the UK, well, James. You know that.
No.
Interesting.
I do know that. Yeah.
No, I've just been attending some in Sweden, and I know that in Italy there are free challenges as well. So
I'll have to come and visit, take advantage.
Yeah, the thing is, Sweden's not very cheap, James. That's why it's free.
That is true. Yeah.
I mean,
that's how they make up for it.
They charge like wounded rhinos. Anyway, listen, boys, I'm gonna wrap this up because obviously it's been an unbelievable year. I want to thank you. I want to congratulate you. And Rafa, when I say goodbye to the boys, can we just put their joint record up, so the tennis record, and just leave it there so that people at home can actually see why we have these boys on near enough week in, week out, and to follow them on Twitter, follow them on Odds Market, and wish them all the best for 2020. So, boys, have a great Christmas, you and your families, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thanks a lot, Flash.
Thanks, man.
It's
been a pleasure. See you in 2020.
Put that record up, Rafa. 64.5 units of profit. Rafa, do you want to put that up again, just so that I can actually see it for like a split second? You've got me like on... it's a bit early in the day for me. So 38.6% accuracy, average price of 10.7. But again, 64.5 units of profit. We'll try and beat that next year. I'm just going to leave it there. Until next time, I'll see you again. Take care.